Fellas, there are some matches that just need to be made in the UFC for this summer. Fights that I think would be the best fights you can possibly make in the UFC, and just fights that overall really intrigue me. I've got a mix of title fights and non-title fights that the UFC should honestly go for this summer, and I think they would be amazing. I think the build-up would be great, and most importantly, I think the fight would be absolutely incredible. Let me know if you've got any fights down below that you really want to see this summer that aren't in this list. But starting off with the first fight, we've got Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. Yeah, this is the fight in the heavyweight division. The interim champion versus the heavyweight champion. And I don't think I'm alone in wanting this matchup. This is one of those fights that need to happen that we're most likely not going to get. No one wants to see Jon Jones versus Stipe. Stipe's got knocked out a few years ago against Francis Ngannou, who was literally limping into arenas. I want to see Jon Jones tested in the heavyweight division against Tom Aspinall. Aspinall deserves to fight. He's knocked out Sergey Pavlovich. He's knocked out Marcin Tybura. He destroyed Alexander Volkov a few years ago, and it's that time when we need to see Aspinall versus Jones. Jones seems to be one of those fighters that always gets it done, no matter the occasion, the opponent, the style. He always seems to get it done, and I don't know if this time Jones gets it done against Tom Aspinall. I really want to see this fight. I don't care if it's in the UK. I don't care where this fight takes place. As long as we get to see Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones, I'm happy. Jones has been hinting towards the fact that he's open to the idea of fighting Aspinall, but to be honest, I think he's just doing that so that Aspinall shuts up. And obviously Aspinall, this is his dream fight. He wants to fight Jones. So for the first fight, I'm going Tom Aspinall versus Jones. I think it'd be really interesting to see how Jon Jones, the guy who always gets it done, he beats wrestlers with wrestling, he beats strikers with striking. I want to see how he gets it done against a style so difficult in Tom Aspinall. So the first fight I've gone for is Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. Then we've got Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. Again, a fight that's kind of been semi-announced because the UFC have said that, well, I mean, they were literally coaches on The Ultimate Fighter, and they've both been saying that they want to fight, but it's not officially got a date yet. I just want to see McGregor back. Honestly, I just want to see McGregor back. I don't care if it's one last time. I think Michael Chandler deserves to fight him as well. They had the entire build-up on The Ultimate Fighter. Chandler's been patiently waiting for the past 2 years to fight Conor McGregor, and he's not been in the octagon because of that. They've been building it, obviously, they've been building up a rivalry online, and I think it's time we see Conor McGregor versus Chandler. Even though a lot of people think McGregor's going to get squashed in this fight, he got a leg broken, obviously he's not mentally well, he's taking drugs, all of this stuff. You got to remember, Michael Chandler's known for having terrible fight IQ. There are so many fights that Michael Chandler should have won, and just because his fight IQ goes out the window, he ends up never winning those fights. And if you think for a second that Michael Chandler's going to make the McGregor fight, if you think Chandler's going to try and wrestle with Conor McGregor, you're deluded. It's the biggest fight he'll ever have in his life. There's no chance Chandler's going to make it a boring fight, and I can definitely just randomly see McGregor chinning Chandler. But yeah, Chandler versus McGregor. We need a McGregor fight this summer, and I feel like the Chandler fight just needs to happen. We've been waiting for ages. Let's see Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. Next fight, Sean O'Malley versus Merab, another title fight. Yeah, this is a fight that really interests me. You've got Merab, who's the most dominant wrestler in the division, and then you've got Sean O'Malley, who's the most dominant striker in the division. This is one of those fights between a striker and a grappler that I really, really want to see. I've had so many mixed opinions on this fight. At first, I always thought Merab was going to ragdoll Sean O'Malley. I thought, oh, if Merab can do that to Peter Yan, and most importantly, Henry Cejudo, then obviously he's going to do it to Sean O'Malley, who got slammed by Peter Yan. Obviously, right? And then you look at Sean O'Malley and the way that he's boxing people like Peter Yan and outstriking Marlon Vera, and the fact that he's so quick and his accuracy is insane and he's always got the perfect shot selection, and the fact that Merab's striking so bad as well, it makes me think, I definitely think Sean O'Malley has the capability to just shoot and drop Merab with a big shot, just like he did with Aljamain Sterling. So Sean O'Malley versus Merab, and I low-key think this build-up would be really interesting. We saw Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera, and honestly, I think the build-up was quite underwhelming. I don't think Marlon Vera really trash-talked as much as I thought he would, whereas Merab, you've already seen his skits online and the promo that this guy has. This guy's going to promote the fight. So Merab versus Sean O'Malley, one of those fights that I really want to see in the bantamweight division, and I'm just really intrigued to see, can Sean O'Malley survive the wrestling of Merab, and can Merab survive the dangerous striking of Sean O'Malley? I really want to see. I think Merab deserves a title shot. Sean O'Malley versus Merab. Next fight we've got Leon Edwards versus Shavkat. Yeah, Leon versus Shavkat. Leon versus Bilal. I don't think anyone's really interested in this fight. It's just one of those fights that we all want to get out the way. But against Shavkat, That's a fight that I want to see. Shavkat's one of those few fighters that have like an insane record. Most fighters, obviously they get hyped up for being undefeated. Shavkat's different. Not only is he undefeated, but he's finished every single opponent that he's ever faced in his entire like MMA career, which is just an insane stat to think. And going into the title fight, that is a badass kind of like, that's a badass label to have on your resume. On top of that, it's coming off finishes over Wonderboy, Jeff Neal, and he just looks great doing so. And I honestly think the thing that makes this fight so interesting is that they're both like stylistic nightmares of each other. Like, for example, Leon Edwards, well, Shavkat, first of all, he's had dodgy striking defense in the past, and his striking overall, it could be improved, which you can't afford to have against a guy who's the best striker in the welterweight division in Leon Edwards, who is, yeah, just insanely technical. You can't really afford to have bad striking against him. And then when it comes to grappling, Shavkat's predominantly a grappler. He likes to go for submissions. Leon Edwards' takedown defense has improved massively in his past few fights, and so was his, yeah, he just overall his grappling has improved a lot, which is bad for Shavkat. But then you look at Leon, he tends to not really do well with pressure. And I just think the submission threat of Shavkat Rakhmonov and the fact that Shavkat, he's improving every fight and he's such a dangerous fighter, that automatically makes it dangerous for Leon Edwards. So I think overall, this fight needs to happen. I've heard people think Shavkat's going to win. I've heard people think that Leon's going to win. Leon versus Shavkat. Get the Bilal fight out the way. This fight needs to happen because it's one of the few Leon Edwards fights that would actually interest me. The Colby one didn't. The Bilal one won. This fight does. So Leon versus Shavkat. Next fight we've got Mohammed Usman versus Chris Barnett. Listen, I've been very vocal about my dislike for fat heavyweights or just heavyweights outside the top 10 in general. But Chris Barnett versus Mohammed Usman is one of those fights that I will make an exception for. Not only would the build-up to this fight be amazing, I mean, you've got Mohammed Usman, one of the most memed fighters in the heavyweight division, and then you've got Chris Barnett, one of the few fat heavyweights that I actually get excited to watch. This fight, unironically, I think would be really intriguing to see. We've just seen Mohammed Usman lose to Mick Parkin, and I think they were actually scheduled to fight. And I'm pretty sure Chris Barnett pulled out, so they had to bring in Mick Parkin. So now that Mohammed Usman's lost, Chris Barnett versus Mohammed Usman needs to happen. I honestly think, unironically, this could be like a fight night co-main event. And if they really want to risk it, put it as a main event for a fight night. But yeah, it was scheduled before, and I think overall, because of the meme potential that this fight has, the build-up wouldn't be, oh, it's another heavyweight top 10 fight. No. I think the build-up to this fight, MMA fans would love it. So Mohammed Usman versus Chris Barnett, underrated, unironically, one of the fights I really want to see this summer. Let's see that fight booked. Then we've got Colby versus Gary. Yeah, Colby Covington versus Ian Gary. This would be the fight between the two most hated fighters in the UFC. Obviously, Colby Covington's coming off a title shot loss to Leon Edwards. Now Ian Gary's just gone out there and beaten, what's his name? Ian Gary's just got a win. So I think we need to see Ian Gary versus Colby Covington ASAP. Now that Ian Gary's, he's looked good in his last few fights, coming off a win over Jeff Neal, I think we need to see this fight. The build-up's already started online. We've had them trash-talking each other in videos. The press conference would be absolutely insane. And overall, this is one of the few fights on this list that I think would have an absolutely incredible build-up. And then the fight itself, we've got a kind of a new striker in Ian Gary, who's obviously undefeated, never lost a fight, and he's looked great striking in all of his fights. Maybe not the most interesting striker, but he's looked great doing so. And then we've got Colby Covington, who kind of looked terrible against Leon Edwards, but we've seen him against guys like Masvidal, where he's able to, if he's in the zone, if he can actually use his wrestling effectively, it can be very effective for Colby Covington. So Colby versus Ian Gary, a fight that I want to see, co-main event for a pay-per-view, and if they really want to push it, maybe a main event for like a non-title fight pay-per-view. But yeah, if Colby wins, then I assume the UFC are going to push him back in the title picture. And if Ian Gary beats Colby Covington, which I don't think is an insanely difficult thing to do, that guarantees Ian Gary a title shot. So Gary versus Covington, I really want to see that fight. Then we've got Cyril Gane versus Sergey Pavlovich. This is one of the most interesting fights you can make in the heavyweight division, and I kind of see it as like the battle for third place. First place in the heavyweight division, even though it should be Aspinall, technically it's Jon Jones. Second place is Aspinall, and third place it's between Cyril Gane and Sergey Pavlovich, which is why I want to see them matched up against each other. But no, this would be one of the most interesting striking matchups, not only in the heavyweight division, but in the entirety of the UFC. You've got Sergey Pavlovich, who, yeah, he's just been knocked out by Tom Aspinall, but before that, he was bulldozing every heavyweight and destroying them with his boxing, accuracy, and power in the first round. And then you've got Cyril Gane, who's more of a technical type of striker, who pieces everyone up and picks them apart, and then eventually beats them in the later rounds, and has only really lost to grapplers, and has looked flawless on the feet in every single fight, which is why I really want to see Cyril Gane versus versus Sergey Pavlovich. Can Sergey Pavlovich go out there and absolutely bulldoze Cyril Gane like he does to pretty much everyone else and finish him early on? Or can Cyril Gane piece up Sergey Pavlovich, take him outside the first round and get the finish or get the decision in the later rounds? I'm really intrigued in this matchup, and I think the winner can definitely get pushed back in. Listen, I don't want to see Cyril Gane versus like a Marcin Tybura. I want to see Cyril Gane against a tough heavyweight if he's going to get pushed back in the title picture. We've seen him against Spivak. We've seen him against Tartu Ivaza. Cool. I want to see him against Pavlovich. Pavlovich would honestly, he'd take this matchup. That guy just fights anyone. I know he's matched against Volkov, but regardless, I still want to see Pavlovich versus Gane. I think it's one of the biggest fights you can make in the UFC, at least one of the biggest in the heavyweight division right now. So Gane versus Pavlovich, the battle of third place. Let's see it. Next fight we got Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. I know there's going to be people in the comments, oh, Israel Adesanya doesn't deserve a title shot. He's coming off a loss. Listen, Sean Strickland, I don't want to see him get thrown immediately back in there with Dricus du Plessis after losing. Close, you can say what you want, but I just want to see a new, fresh title challenger. Unless they're going to do the winner of Chimaev and Whitaker against Dricus, which in that case, Dricus is literally going to have to wait for the rest of the year. I think Adesanya is the only option you can make. On top of that, they've got this build-up that they've started that I just really want to see. We saw the build-up after UFC 290 after Dricus beat Whitaker, and obviously the UFC were expecting that Adesanya was going to beat Strickland so that they could make that fight. But now that Strickland's just lost to Dricus du Plessis, it's the perfect fight to make. If the UFC are going to be smart business-wise, it is the fight to make. I want to see Dricus against fresh blood. And I honestly think it's like, listen, Adesanya as a challenger is a mythical fighter. I've noticed this. Whenever Adesanya is challenging for the belt, he becomes like 100 times better. He's insane. His striking's a lot better. His accuracy's a lot better. He gets in much less dangerous situations. And Adesanya as a challenger is like this mythical fighter, and I think he's one of the funnest when he's a challenger. Obviously, when he's defending, it's a different story. But yeah, Adesanya versus Dricus. I'm really intrigued to see how their styles match up against each other, but overall, the build-up would be insane. It's one of the best rivalries in the middleweight division. Hopefully, they can do it in Africa towards the end of the year. UFC have been very diverse this year with the places that they've been going, but hopefully they can do it in Africa. But yeah, Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. Adesanya's last chance at the belt. He's got this insane middleweight legacy against Dricus du Plessis, who's basically just pushed himself through every fight. Dricus versus Adesanya. And then the final fight, Strickland versus Usman 2. Listen, Sean Strickland versus Usman 2, unironically a fight that I actually kind of want to see. Obviously, we saw this fight a few years ago. Well, I say a few years ago, it was ages ago. Back when they were both kind of on their come-up, and back when Strickland was in the welterweight division, Strickland got battered by Usman, right? But I feel like we're in this position where I honestly wouldn't mind seeing this matchup. Strickland doesn't really have any fights right now. I mean, we've got Whitaker and Chimaev. Adesanya's supposedly going to be fighting Dricus. Unless they do Cannonier versus Strickland, I want to see Usman versus Strickland. Yes, Usman has just lost to Khamzat Chimaev, but it was a close fight. It wasn't like he went out there and got absolutely dominated. Unironically, I really want to see this rematch. Obviously, they gave Marlon Vera a title shot against Sean O'Malley purely for the fact that he's beaten Sean O'Malley before. So I don't see why they can't give Usman a big step up in competition against Strickland when he's also beaten him before. And I think that, unironically, Usman, one of the best in the world, or at least was one of the best in the world a few years ago, against former champion Sean Strickland, who's only just lost a belt. If Strickland can go out there and beat Usman, who's beaten him before, then he can get a title shot from that. And if Usman can somehow beat Sean Strickland a second time and, you know, get rid of this losing streak by beating Sean Strickland, unironically, I think Usman could be fighting for a belt. Obviously, it's going to be quite tricky when we've got Usman and Adesanya in the same division fighting around the title picture. But yeah, Usman versus Strickland 2. I want to see that fight. But yeah, that is dream fights that I really want to see in the UFC this summer. A mix of title fights and non-title fights that I just think would be really interesting. Let me know your thoughts on these fights and if you've got any fights that I haven't included in this list. And thank you for watching.